Hi, I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore.
We are the Gentleman Project podcast. We help you turn the time you have with your kids into time well spent.
Yep, Kirk and I talked a lot about how to be better dads and to raise gentlemen, and we realized that more people wanted to be inspired and talk about that, and thus this Gentleman Project podcast.
We've had lots of conversations with each other and with our friends, and what we decided to do was to record some of these conversations and bring them to you in a podcast. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Gentleman Project podcast. Today we have Jake Heugly, good friend of mine, amazing person. You don't like the amazing part? You
No, it's fine.
Cut that out. Really one of my good friends and great people, great energy. I love this guy. Jake, thanks for being with us.
Man, it's great to be here. Thanks, Cory, for the invite. And Kirk, it's awesome to be with you guys.
Thank you. Jake, tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience that's listening knows who you are and what your background is.
I grew up here in Utah. I've watched my father be a banker for 45 years and took that career path, ended up being a banker. I work at Zions Bank. I'm currently in one of the executives. I've got teams all across the United States, from Boston to California, and have been in multiple different kind of functions and roles at the bank, and it's been a fabulous experience. My family, kind of a background of who we are. I said that we grew up here in Utah. I've got 4 other brothers. We're all within 7 years, and you can imagine. Cory, you know me well. We're a pretty competitive, family, and so it was Saturday. Football, it was basketball, it was everything sports related, and just trying to be competitive and having fun. And then Sunday, spending a lot of time with the family, playing board games, doing those types of things. That's who we are.
Cool. So tell us about your current family. How many kids do you have, and what are their ages? Because I know there's some exciting stuff happening in your family right now.
Yeah, I've got right now 5 children, and don't plan to have any more. The reason why I don't have any more is because I have a grandchild on the way. Hadley is going to be her name, and she's going to be here with us in January. I've got 5 children. I've got 2 boys at the front who I've spent just countless hours with, coaching and time with, and having a good, trying to raise them right.
How old are they now?
The 2 boys at the top, 24 and 21, out on their own. One, the oldest, actually followed my footsteps and works at Zions Bank with me.
Cool.
And just does a great job. In the middle, I've got 2 girls. One is at Westminster College. She's a lacrosse player and just does an excellent job. This is your 4.0 student. Good thing she got the scholarship, so I didn't have to pay as much for the college route, but she is just amazing. And then I've got another daughter in high school who's on the lacrosse team. And the caboose is Bridger. He's my 11-year-old boy who... he's built like a Greek god. He's amazing. I thought he would follow the football path like I had hoped for originally. And he took his own path and wanted to do taekwondo. And guess what, Kirk? That's what we do. We do taekwondo. It's pretty fun.
Nice. So you have, I've actually seen some pictures of you and Bridger, and you both are kind of working yourself through the ranks of taekwondo, right?
Well, listen, I think I think parenting is an action sport. So getting involved is really, really important. So I've been involved with all of my kids, from football coaching to, the lacrosse, being involved with coaching or either being on the board. So when Bridger wanted to do taekwondo, I kind of scratched my head. I'm like, well, that's a single person kind of contributing role kind of, sport that he's trying to do. So I watched him for the first 3 months from the sideline. Biggest cheerleader, went to every one of his practices. And the guy, the Dojan instructor, he looked over at me. His name is Chris Cantwell, and he said, you're over here. You're positive. You're always supporting him. Why don't you come join us? And did that little encouragement, and I said, I'm all in. So yeah, right now I'm testing. I've got a tournament next weekend. I'll be going for. They've got gold, silver and bronze kind of medals for the tournament here. It's the districts, and then I'm working after that for my belt ranks. I'm a 3rd degree blue belt right now, and my son's a 3rd degree brown belt, and so I'm just trying to follow in his footsteps.
Do they have like dad brackets?
They've got like fat dad brackets, which I am now squarely a part of. No, it's fun. You've got in the adult classes, you've got those who are maybe in their 20s and 30s and aggressive, and they're fabulous. Then you got the guys like me who are in the 40s and the 50s, and they got dad bods, and we're going after each other. It's way, way fun. It's much more entertaining than I ever dreamed possible.
So what has that done for your relationship with Bridger?
Well, listen, Bridger and I are really close, but this has brought us even closer. I'll tell you a fun story. The other day I was competing and I had lost to another gentleman, and we were going back and forth. It's fun. It's fun competition and whatnot. And Bridger saw, and I look over there, and he's heartbroken, and he steps up onto the mat right after me. And what does he do? I mean, he goes after this guy, and Bridger ends up winning, in this match. And in the car, he says, "I'm just representing the Heugly name, Dad. I got your back." And so you can imagine just the love for this kid. It's brought us really, really close together because, listen, I'm involved in what he's involved. If it's lacrosse, I'm into lacrosse. If it's football, I'm into football. When my son wanted to wrestle, I'm all in. I got the unitard. I'm out on the mat, with the head things. I'm kidding. I didn't go that far, but you get it. It's pretty close.
That's cool.
Well, you're one of those people that I look at and I go, Jake will do anything. Like he will jump in and try anything. Is that part of who you are, or is that more driven by love for your kids? I mean, tell me about that.
Being there, man, being present. You just have a very short time. And I look at like my oldest son and my second son, et cetera, and I cherish every second I had with them. And I didn't want to look back and think, man, I wish I wouldn't have worked so hard and spent more time with them. I heard from my father. My father was a 45-year executive in banking, but he was present. He was always there. He came to every one of my football practices. And now we have a relationship. I see him every single week, almost every day. I'm on the phone with my dad, and we're huddling up, we're talking. So for me, it's in my DNA. Cory, I want to be there with my kids. I want those memories, because at the end of the day, that's what we've got. So for me, it's not hard to want to be involved. People say, what is your hobby? What do you like to do? My hobby is my children. My hobby is being present with my kids. That's what I want to do. And what they're into, I'm all in.
Tell us more about your dad and talk to us about what are the things that he taught you that you cherish, that you're passing on to your kids.
He is, first of all, you talk about, a giant among men. That's him, my dad. He's my greatest hero. I grew up watching him. I can remember as a young boy driving in an old Buick out to California to go to Disneyland, 5 boys in the car. Now, I said a Buick. There's 7 of us in a car. I'm sitting on like the armrest, down I-15, as you can imagine.
I think I've seen this movie before. It's like
I'm sitting there, and I would just talk to my dad and ask him questions and learn from him. And that's never stopped. So I've always wanted to be close to my dad. Growing up with him, he instilled the work ethic that I have today that I'm really grateful for. 5 boys, Monday, Tuesday through Friday, each boy had a day to do dishes to help mom in the house. It was required. You needed to be present and to help mom do the laundry and do the dishes. What did we do on Saturdays? Well, every single Saturday morning, 7 a.m., we got up and we were working. And if you weren't there at 7 a.m., my dad gave you the jobs of everyone else in the family. So you were always present. You were always on time. In fact, we joke about it today. Hugely standard time. HST is what we run by. If you're not 15 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. And so he instilled that work ethic and making sure that you understood the value of hard work. We grew up. I had money. My dad, we could go do fun things, but he wasn't always the, hey, let's go play every minute, every second. He worked. And that's what I'm trying to do with my children. And they all are hard workers today, and I'm proud of them.
So how are you teaching your kids hard work? How are you going about doing that?
Well, let me give you a real quick example. So last night, right, with Bridger, the 11-year-old, before he can go play, when he comes home from school, before he goes and plays with his kids, we have one job that we have to accomplish in the yard or in the house or whatnot every single day. You become a habit. And that's been going on. The other day he was cutting the ivy back from the windows. He's on top of a ladder and he's telling me, Dad, I did it. I wasn't afraid this time to climb the ladder. And last night he was spray painting some things that I wanted for the front yard. Some, doing the kind of a black glossy coat. And he's over there learning how to do spray paint. And he gets done and he's got spray paint all over his fingers. And he looks over at me. He's like, Dad, I screwed up. Look at this, Dad. I've got paint on my hands. And I said, no, son, that's what happens when you spray paint. Let me show you some other ways. And so I'm trying to do those types of things, get involved, and I do hands off. I let him try. I let him, fail if need be, and I'm there to catch him and to show him. So every day we try to do a job.
Yeah, when you said that, my grandfather taught me that, and I remember like up at the ranch, we built a bunkhouse on the cabin, and we needed a little addition. And he looked at me when I was like 13 years old, and he goes, "You know what I think the bunkhouse needs? It needs a window." And he said, I've got something that I've got to go do. I got to go to fix a fence or something like that. Why don't you figure out how to put a window in that wall, and I'll be back in a while. And I was like, I'm cutting a hole in the wall. And he goes, well, no, there's a window over there. And, I think you can figure it out. And I learned how to put a window in a wall because he was hands off. He let me do it. And you know what? Like, I'm 40 now, and I look at that window in the bunkhouse at the ranch, and I think still, like 27 years ago, I was like nervous out of my mind that I was going to mess up this new wall that we built. But I put that window in, right? And it like just sticks with you. So like Bridger might remember that paint on his hands for a long, long time to come, but he's also going to remember my dad said, it's okay. You got paint on your hands. Here's a different way to do it. I remember my dad, he was in the paint sales business, and he was like master at the spray can, right? I don't know how many times he told me, you got to keep it smooth, man. Like it's not stop and start, you got to stop and start in certain spots. And, those individual conversations that you have with your dad, you might think as a dad that they're just like passing, right? But when the kid feels like they get out of the stream of normal life and dad's taking time to sit there and talk to you about, hey, this is a life skill you're probably going to need sometime. Why don't I teach you how to do this so that you can do this and teach somebody else someday? They don't forget that stuff.
They don't. And it's like, my dad was an intentional dad. Everything he did had purpose. It wasn't by chance. It was very intentional, and having us be hands-on and trying to learn ourselves and failing at things and whatnot. I remember, as probably an 11-year-old son, about Bridger's age, we had a huge apple tree in our front yard. And my dad would say, hey, go pick up the apples that have fallen on the ground. I need you to get that's one of your jobs today. And we'd go around, and I'd be hurting my back. And, you're over there picking up apples and buckets of them for like an hour. Well, we ended up making a stick that we put a nail at the end. And so I could stand there and I could stab the apple and put it into the bucket, and I got quicker at it. Well, Bridger, last week, we have a new apple tree. We just moved Kirk. I actually bought my dad's house, as he's retired, and they're upgrading but downsizing. I purchased his home, and they've got an apple tree with a bunch of apples on the ground in the backyard. And I said, oh, that's it. Mm-hmm. Let's go see if I can get the little man out there. And, he's been picking up apples. The first 2 buckets, he filled up by hand. After that, I helped him, and we made a stick with a nail at the end.
That's cool.
And he's over there, and he's like, Dad, this is the greatest thing. I want to pick up apples all the time. But it's trying to be an intentional dad and being thoughtful on how you're trying to teach them skills so that they can have critical thinking skills when they're older.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I had my dad on last week. Was pretty cool. And we started talking about some of the sayings we have as a family. Like, we have work hard, play hard, and never, ever give up. And my dad has a tack life, some of these isms, as we call them. And I like to talk to our guests about that because I think that there's something about these sayings or these things that you talk about as a family and consistently and maybe for generations. Do you have some of these things that the Heugleys talk about often, or isms that you have, something like that?
I'm really glad you actually brought that up. When my dad retired from banking, the gift I gave to him was a book. And the book was every one-liner that my dad would say over the years of parenting. And remember, when he was working at the bank, I started at the bank just like my son. And so he would give me ideas and he would give me one-liners and I would write them down. Next to my desk, I had a yellow notepad. I filled up 2 full notepads over the years of one-liners that my dad would say. And the book that I wrote for him was The Heugly Way of Business, Managing Life One Line at a Time. And he had all these cool little sayings that would teach us both at work professionally, but then at home. A line that he would say at home all of the time was, Hughlys don't lie. Hughlys don't lie. And he says, if you lose your integrity and if people can't trust you, you're done. And he says, it's so important. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. You need to tell the truth. And that was something I learned. And that's something I instill with my kids even today. Another thing he would say is, a fool and his money are soon parted. He says any man can make money, but it's a wise man that can save and dispose of that to his own advantage is really the one that can get ahead in life. And so, this is my father who did well. We were young kids teenagers, and we would go to the grocery store. He drove a 930 turbo cherry Porsche. I mean, the most beautiful car. I wish I could buy it today. It's way too expensive now, but just this most beautiful car. But before we would go in to get groceries, he'd sit us down and we'd cut coupons as a family on what our groceries were going to be for the week for the 5 boys, so that we were thoughtful in preparing that. And here I am, I've got my coupons in my hand and okay, I want this, and I'd make my meal for one of the days and have those coupons. Then we'd go load up in the 930 turbo Porsche and go drive him. He taught us how to be smart about money. And that is one of the most important things I've tried to stress to my children, especially the adult children who are all extremely well. Both of my sons own their own homes already at 24 and 21. And my daughter, she got the presidential scholarship and some other things at Westminster. She's a 4.0 student, straight 4.0s. And that's what I'm trying to teach them about, is managing their money wisely.
Awesome.
Sounds like you could go on and on with one-liners from your dad. Maybe we need to get our hands on this book.
I want a copy of the book if that's possible. That would be awesome.
There's some cool. I'll tell you a fun one. Right when I started the bank, I did a foreign exchange transaction, and I did the decimal place in the wrong spot, and I messed up. But I went upstairs to go tell my dad. Dad, look how successful. Look at what I was able to do. And he looked at me and he looked at it. He says, Jake, you did the math wrong. And then he said, now, if I agreed with you, we'd both be wrong. That was the one line he said to me. And it was a coaching moment. I still remember it to this day. If I agreed with you, we'd both be wrong. And I'm telling you, I've got just thousands of little quotes from my dad that he tried to instill upon us. But yeah, I've got.
That's cool.
I could be here for another hour.
Well, maybe we need to interview your dad.
Be the greatest thing you could do, I'm telling you.
So you also have some traditions. You grew up with brothers, and you've continued a few of those traditions to keep close ties with your family. And I'm sure that translates into the culture in your family, like within the walls of your own home.
Yeah.
But you guys actually do some pretty cool stuff as brothers still, right?
We do. First of all, I told you there's 5 boys, no girls in the family. We're all within 7 years. We are close. Every single Friday, we get together and call it Brothers Lunch. My mom and dad have organized this. It's been going on for over 25 years. We don't miss. Even during COVID, when you weren't allowed to go, we sat in a church parking lot in chairs and we were 10 feet apart from each other because we had to spend that time every Friday. So my mom, she'll, sometimes we go to a restaurant, excuse me, but many times she'll make a meal, and especially during COVID, she's made a meal at the home every single Friday for 25 years. We go there and she's got her home cooking and she'll ask you, okay, Jake, it's your week. What would you like? And so I'll ask for a traditional meal that she makes that we love. And so the boys gather, we counsel with each other. We tell the good, we tell the bad. It gives you a safe place to think out loud. As a dad, it's kind of hard to, always try to make the right decisions. I've got children who have deviated from things that I believe in. And, first people I go to my brothers. Guys, what do you think? Am I a terrible dad? What have I missed? What's going on? Or I go to my mom and my dad, and they'll say, hey, here's some thoughts, on something that's happening with a child at school. Maybe they're getting bullied or something's going on, and they give you some real great insight. So we've been doing that, Kirk, for 25 plus years, like I mentioned. And I'm telling you, I'm my mom's favorite. So I
can't imagine the strength of relationships that you guys would have as, growing up together and then still continuing that tradition for 25 years into adulthood. Those have got to be some pretty strong connections that you've got with your brothers.
My boys, dude, they're blood, and blood is thicker than water. I can tell you that those guys have got my back. I could ask any of them anything to go do anything at any moment. They wouldn't ask why, they'd do it.
Wow, that's a valuable asset.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have,
Yeah, they're all just they're incredible examples too. They're good fathers. There's 30 grandchildren out of that 5. And they're good dads. They care deeply. They're all involved. And so, a child goes forth and becomes what he sees, right? They emulate what they see. And I'm grateful that my children see wonderful examples. We're together all the time. You see on my social media posts and stuff, we swim, we travel, we do a brothers trip. All 5 boys like a different football team. I'm a Raiders fan, go Raiders. And we go with my mom and dad and the boys. We call it the brothers trip. And we go to a football game. We've been to Pittsburgh. We've been to Dallas. We've been to Denver. But we've gone to all these places as family, and I can tell you, our bond is the most important thing.
We've encouraged people to have these Gentleman Project lunches once a month to grab somebody that they identify with, that maybe is in front of them or behind them in fatherhood, or maybe in the same position. Go to lunch, make a commitment to be a better dad, hold each other accountable, come back the next month. How'd you do? If you didn't do it, then why not? And let's not judge each other and move forward. Have a place that they can talk about some of the things that I think dads sometimes feel like they're an island and they don't really have anybody that they can speak with about challenges that they're having as fathers. Honestly, right now, I'm doing stuff as a dad with my oldest that I've never had to do as a kid. I never thought I'd have to do, stuff that's totally off my radar. And I'm doing it for the first time. And I looked at my daughter yesterday and I said, you and I both have to get used to each other having a learning curve, because this is the first time I've done this, the first time you've done this, and we've got to be patient with each other. But my relationships with some of those men that I've had those lunches with, it's a strong bond. And I think you've kind of taken it to the next level, doing it with your brothers and doing it weekly with consistency is admirable. That's
we don't miss.
Doesn't just happen.
They're fabulous. Those brothers lunches are, I think, foundational to me becoming a dad. And learning from my father, obviously, but asking the brothers who are going through it. It's one thing to hear other people tell you things. It's another thing to watch and to see it and to learn. So I have done other lunches with great men that these dads who need advice, myself included. And I think to your listeners, I would say this, Kirk: be vulnerable. It's okay to think out loud, and if you get emotional because sometimes you feel like you're not doing it right, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to be superhuman. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your back. We're not all great dads all the time. We're striving to be, we're trying, but it doesn't mean that you have to be all the time. And so that's one thing, is I've gone to lunch with others. I've got some cool people that are very vulnerable, and myself included.
Well, speaking of vulnerability, let me ask you what is sometimes a very good question for listeners, because we have all made mistakes. We've all not done it perfectly. Are there any lessons learned, or I wish I would have, or something that you learned later you wished you would have learned earlier? Anything like that you would have the listeners know about?
I think being intentional, going back to that word I was using before, when I first started off being a dad, I was an instant father. My wife had a child, and so I became a dad day one. And we immediately had a child following, because we wanted to keep our kids close in age and raise these children. And they're wonderful. And at the beginning, I can tell you, Cory, it was, I look back and I made a lot of mistakes. I was too hard originally. I was critical, if they weren't doing the work that I wanted to, and I would have more fun. I do that now. Now I'm fun dad.
I see that you do that now. Yeah.
Yeah. At the beginning, work ethic was so important to me that that's all we did. So I sat down with Andrew and Christian, my first two, and it was a lot of work, because I wanted them to be successful in life. My intentions were good, but man, I needed to teach them balance. And I can tell you, my mom raised us. My dad is, well, they're both incredible, but my mom was especially on the fun side, and she would balance that. My dad taught us the work side. They both did both. Don't get me wrong, but that's what their emphasis was. And I was, that's a lesson I wish I would have learned earlier, is to have even a little bit more fun. But I'm making up for it now. My boy comes over almost every day, plays football in the front yard with the nieces and nephews and the other cousins. And I mean, our home is a gathering place, and it's because people have fun, but they also know there's an expectation that they have to work for it too.
Are there any moments, trips, things that are like defining moments for you or stories for you that you would want to tell the listeners about?
There was kind of an aha moment. I told you that I've tried to teach my children to be smart about money. Now, I'm a banker, so you would expect that bent from me a little bit, but we introduced something that I had learned early on, a thing called flash cash. Now, you may be thinking, what is flash cash? Is this some kind of Bitcoin currency? No. What this was I wanted to give my kids a budget. So when we'd go to Disneyland, we'd go to all over the place. We travel all the time. Well, it can get expensive, like buying your kids everything that they want, at all these stores. And you want to be a good dad. You want to buy, you want to spend all this money, but that doesn't really bring happiness. What was bringing happiness was I'd introduced to my kids what I had learned, which was flash cash. So when we'd go on a trip, I'd give them a $50 bill, $100 bill, whatever it was, depending on the duration. And I'd say, this is yours. I don't care if you buy 100 Snickers candy bars. I don't care if you buy yourself a $100 t-shirt, when you're on the trip. This money is yours. It's your flash cash. You get to have this experience and buy what you want. And then I wasn't spending $300 and $500 per kid, that you can easily get caught up to at Disneyland when every store that you want to go into. And what I noticed, Cory, they were happier. When I'd give them the money, like my 11-year-old, we'd go to Disneyland, I'd give him a $50 bill. And I tell him, keep this in your pocket and whatnot. And he'd say, Dad, this is really important to me. He's like, will you hold on to my $50? So he'd hand it right back to me. But he wasn't asking me every 2 seconds to go buy him something. We were living in the moment and having fun because the money and all of that, he was now in charge of. He was in control. So flash cash is something that we love.
That's really good. We actually tried something like that for a little while. We kind of grew out of it. We called it the PEEPS project, the Personal Excellence and Accountability Project. And they would get paid to do the basic daily chores at home that they were expected to do, like make their bed, practice the piano, do their daily job, which is kitchen, outside, front room, or bathrooms. And they would rotate through those jobs, and they would put a sticker on a calendar every day. And then at the end of the week, I would pay them. And I would pay them, enough. I actually divided the expenses that we had as a family to do clothes, and we bought food and everything like that. But if they wanted to go buy extra clothes, if they wanted to go buy toys or anything like that, they would actually have enough money if they did their jobs to support themselves with a full budget. And so I was writing $150 checks to 7-year-olds, and I was like, well, okay, here you go. But then what they realize is that if you work, you get paid. If you don't work, you don't get paid. And I think that was probably the biggest lesson that we learned that way. And everybody has to trial and error, see what happens with their kids, what happens with their personalities. That got a little bit cumbersome. And so, we've changed a little bit since then, but I actually found the binder that we used that had the stickers and everything else in it. And but the thing I think that was the most valuable about that Peeps project that we tried out was it gave me time at the end of the week, because you don't get out of that appointment with a kid if they know that they're going to get a check written at the end of the week or the end of the month. You have that meeting.
That's right.
Like the kids are like, "Hey,
payday.
Dad,
It's payday, baby.
It's payday. Let's go sit down and talk about life." And it gave me a good opportunity, and it gave me the venue to have that open dialogue with those kids, which is a great reminder to me that even if we're not still doing this money project, that those sit downs are important in creating the structure so that those kids have a venue and an opportunity to talk to you about things that you may not happen in everyday regular conversation as you pass each other in the hallway.
That's true. But I look at your kids, and they've got great work ethics, so part of the program is to try to teach a kid work ethic and earning money and the value of that money. I think that's what I loved seeing on your Facebook and social media with the things that you do as a good dad.
So you're extremely successful. I know that, and competitive at work and in sports and other things. And you spend a lot of time with your family. So I get this question all the time, and I like to ask this question because it's hard. How have you found this work-life balance? Where is it working? Where is it not? Like, what do you do? Are there some habits? Where's your head at as it relates to work-life balance?
I believe it's work-life integration is the biggest key. I work a lot. I work a lot of hours. I'm always plugged in. I could be plugged in nonstop, man. You can never leave, and I could still not have enough time to get all the work done. I've got a lot of responsibility. I've got a lot of deadlines, a lot of teams that I work with. What I have forced myself to do is to get into the habit of scheduling. My calendar helps rule my day. And so I will be intentional about scheduling. If my children have a lacrosse game at 4:30, I'm bugging off at 4:30, and I'll log back in later on. But I schedule everything, and I talk to the family about the trips. I have them be involved in it. Recently, we went to Africa before COVID, and taking 2 weeks off on an African safari and being with my family is really hard for me from a work standpoint. We had planned that 2 years in advance. So I've been really intentional about, that's that word again, intentional about being good at scheduling out everything. So when my kids get there, if they're in piano, if they've got, a singing thing for Christmas, I put all of those in my calendar. And I tell my wife, if you hear of anything, send me an appointment. Now that might seem like totally trivial, but guess what? If I don't manage my calendar, somebody else will.
I'm exactly the same way.
Yeah, you have to.
People ask me, well, what do you got going on tomorrow? Let me look at my calendar, because I live off that calendar, nothing else. That's how my whole life has ran off my calendar.
Yeah. And you can be hyper efficient, right? So I can start my day really early. I'm an early riser. I get up, I like to get my work done. I can read in bed. I can do that. But I can't try to go, hit another game that my son's playing in or my daughter's starting in for the first time. I can't go make that back up because I attended some other meeting. So people know my hobby is my family. I don't do much outside of that. I try to play a little golf. I try to do some other things. Cory, you've seen me golf. I'm a great...
He's really, really good for as little as he plays, actually. It's pretty impressive.
I'm a tournament player, man. You need a fourth guy on the team. I can smack the ball down there, but not every shot's going to go right down the middle.
Incredible short game.
I'm the scramble guy, too. If I show, it's like, sorry, guys, you guys are on your own.
I'm a scramble. I'm a scramble kind of guy, but... That's what I've tried to do.
Do you have a certain time that you plan your calendar? Do you plan the week before? I know there's some constant calendaring, but is there a habit you have of I calendar my week every Sunday or every morning or that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Sundays, quieter days, I'll go do my church activities and those types of things. And when the family's taking a rest or a nap, a lot of times I'll go to my week ahead and I'll look it over, and I'll intentionally block off, chunks of time that I need to do stuff, or man, I need to run to Home Depot to go get these things so I can have supplies for spray paint when I go work with my son at night. So I'll schedule 15 minutes. And that may sound totally dumb, but if I don't get it in that calendar, my calendar will rule the day. I mean, somebody else will tell me where I've got to be. And you know what it's like. You're a busy executive. I got 1,000 people trying to meet with you all at once. And it's tough. It's hard because you don't want to let people down. But because, Cory, I've been really good and disciplined at my calendar, when people need to meet with me, when they reach out, I say, people at the bank, I say, if there's an open slot, book it. Because I've already taken care of the important pieces.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that.
And so people can find time, because they say, Jake's available, he can make time. I make time because all of the important stuff, the family things, are already booked out.
So you put the big rocks in the jar first, kind of a
It's
thing.
a great analogy, and that's exactly what I'll do, is put the big rocks in so I don't miss those. I can't afford to not be present with the kids because you only get one chance to be a dad.
And I think I have lots of friends, lots of dads, and I think you're probably one of the better at that, quite frankly. That's why I ask you that question, because I can see that you do that. I can see that, and that your kids, I'm sure your older kids already see it.
Oh, yeah.
Your older kids go, oh, yeah, Dad did that. I see it now. My kids are younger, more close age to your youngest, and I hope that they look back and go, oh, yeah, Dad came to my stuff, and he was there, and he did prioritize middle of the day Christmas pageants at school and that kind of stuff. But not that I need to do better. That's why I'm asking you some of these questions, is how do I do better?
Hey, man, just go after it.
So, Jake, you talked a little bit about the intentional fatherhood. You also talked about vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And so I guess to kind of wrap things up here today, you have given, you're an awesome dad. I think you're doing a great job. Thanks. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell the audience something that, as a dad, you are currently finding challenging, and what you're learning from that, and being maybe a little bit vulnerable if there's something that you would like to say, hey, don't have this quite figured out yet, struggling with this. I think it gives our audience the opportunity to say, yeah, Jake's a great dad. Sounds like he's doing a fantastic job, but he's also real. Because we all know nobody's got this all figured out.
Yeah.
So what are you doing right now that's a challenge, or what are you dealing with? Yeah,
I appreciate that. First of all, I'll be the first to admit I've got a lot of work to do. I look at the other examples, my brothers, my dad, and those men I want to emulate. And sometimes you can get discouraged and just say, man, I'm not measuring up. I'm not doing everything I can. I think one of the greatest challenges that I have is taking. So let me start with this. My second son came out as gay, and that is I'm happy for him. He's happy, and when that first happened, I was shocked. Our family was shocked. He moved out of the house. And wanted to be on his own, and we were hurt. We're trying to figure out what do we do, and once you realize, look, my job's not to try to fix him. That wasn't it, and I think that's the common misconception from a lot of people is, boy, oh my gosh, I've got to go try to fix him. That's not it. He's happy. My son is amazing. He's a wonderful man, and my job's to love him and to love him through this. That's the most important thing. And I can tell you, Kirk, that learning curve, nobody gives you the manual. When your son comes out as gay, what do you do as a father, and how do you make sure? The most important thing you can do is love him. And that's, talk about being vulnerable. I was, the first date, I didn't know what to do. I was lost for words. I was trying to find, what do I text him so he knows I love him? I said all the wrong things, even though my intentions were good. I learned. And so I'll tell you, if you're asking me what was the hardest thing that recently that kind of I went through, was that. But I love him unconditionally. We are together all the time. In fact, if you saw him, he's awesome as he's brought over his boyfriend, and we have family dinner, and we do Thanksgiving together. And this was last year, we partied, and we treat him and love him just like I would my daughter-in-law. who I treat and love unconditionally. So it's been fun. That's been a hard learning experience at the beginning, but once you let go and realize, hey man, he's happy. I want to be there and support him. I can tell you that's some of my biggest growth that I've had over the last couple of years is learning to love unconditionally and what that truly means.
Oh, that's powerful. Thanks for sharing that with us.
You bet.
We've got a lot of things to learn, and I'm going to listen to this podcast several times myself, and hope that the audience has enjoyed the bits of wisdom that you've shared with us. I think some of your family traditions and the things that you guys have done and tried to keep that family unit together, even as you grow with your own families, has been one of the things that has kind of impacted me the most and makes me want to go and try to do and be better. So, Jake Heugly, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your schedule. And we know that, you scheduled us on your calendar just like everybody else. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore. Thank you so much, Jake. You inspire me. Thanks, brother.